What we want to talk about today is another type of data that we can store inside of our classes. So far we've learned that we can store primitive data types like float and int. We can store objects like string and even our own created account holder object or a scanner or a print writer. So you can actually store any object, any class. So this is called aggregation when you're referring to an object. And what we want to learn today is that we can also store something called enumerated types. So enums are kind of like something between primitive data types and classes. So it's not really a class that you're creating, it's a class that you're creating on the fly, really. And the syntax for it is the word enum, and then you put the data type, like you give it a name, kind of like a class name that you're choosing. And then in the curly braces, you give it all the values that you want to allow. So for example, if I want to have an enum that has all the days of the week, I can say enum day and then put all the days or the months. So let's do that for our bank account. So maybe what I want to do is I want to create an enum that is account types. And maybe my possible account types are checking and savings and retirement. Okay, let's say those are the three types that I want to create. Okay, so you put them in there, and here you see that the semicolon is optional. I could have left it. I'm just used to always putting a semicolon at the end of the line, so I just put it, but it's actually optional. You can leave it there. So this is the creation. This is kind of like the class that you create with information in it. It's just that one line. And now I want to save a reference to this day. Okay, so here I can put that I'm going to store the account type of this bank account object. And then when you want to set it, you need to make sure that you go to the enum and get a value out of it. So for example, I'm going to come here to my default constructor and say that if they decide that they're not going to tell me anything, I will just make the type be checking. So I go to, I called it account type, the object, the enum, and I'm going to choose checking. Of course, now I should have another constructor that is more general, that takes the string, name, float amount, and the account type T. And let's copy all this in here. This should be our most general constructor. So the account type is whatever type they give us. And here we will be using this constructor to give it the name, the amount, and we'll just give it the account type checking. So now I've written a constructor that takes this information. Okay. So this is how you create the enum. This is how you declare a variable with it. And this is how you can give it an assignment. Now, sometimes it is not easy to get that type. Like, in your code, I might just say checking. But what if I'm using the user? I'm asking the user, what type of account do you want? And I read in with scanner the type. So let's do that. Let's come here and create a scanner. Let's import scanner. So import java.util.scanner. And let's have the user give us some information. So where is our main method? Okay, there is main. So let's just delete all that. So I'm going to create a scanner. So let's review creating a scanner. Scanner K equal to new scanner system.in. And let's gather the information. So I'll ask them for the piece of information. So enter name, then amount, then account type. So let's ask for these three pieces of information. So the first thing they're entering is the name. So I'll say K name equal to K dot next line. The next thing they're entering is the amount. Float. And remember, I need to ignore the enter that they entered after the float. So I have the K dot next line. And then I'm going to read in the account type from the user. So I've asked them for 3 pieces of information. I've read in the 3 pieces of information. Now I'm going to create my bank account with that information. So I give them the name, the amount, and the type. And we're going to find that this is going to be a problem. And of course, we want to print it to make sure. Right. So we're going to print it eventually. But this line is not compiling. And the reason it's not compiling is that it says incompatible types. String cannot be converted to account type. This is a string, and the constructor does not take a string. It takes an account type. So, how can I convert that string to an account type? Well, there are some methods. So, there are a few methods that are available on these enums. So this object, this enum type that you created, really behaves in the underlying implementation as a class, and that class has some methods. So for example, it has a toString method. So if I wanted to print it out, I would use the toString. So if I wanted to go to my code and modify the toString method that I have here, I would say str plus equal, and let's put the account type. I can just say account type dot toString, and that'll print it to me. I can convert it to a number, so I can kind of treat it as if that the enums were an array, and I'm storing the number, the location in it. I can use the equals method. So in my equals code, I can check if 2 objects are equal, if 2 enums are equal. So I can say if a type dot equals other dot a type. Or here I want to say if it's not equal. So if they're not equal, return false. Okay. I can do a comparator to see which one is smaller. You know, if you're doing like comparisons, order matters. But what we're looking for now is this method at the bottom, which is called value of. You give it a string, and it gives you the equivalent enum type that's equivalent to that string. So here in my main, I can go to the enum that I created, which is called account type, and I say I want you to give me the value of. So the value of takes a string, and it's going to give you back an account type object. And I want you to give me back the account, the equivalence of this string that the user typed in. Okay, and so let's test it and make sure it's working. So cat has 10, and it has checking, and now it tells me that it's working. It has checking. Now notice what's going to happen if I said checking. It throws an exception, because there is no such type as checking with all lowercase. So maybe here I want to make sure that I changed it to uppercase. So let's test it now with that. Cat 10 checking. So now at least it works for this. But of course, if they try to enter something that doesn't exist, it'll crash. And we will deal with that crashing later in another chapter when we learn how to deal with exceptions. But basically, that's how you would use enums. Here's another example in the slides. I have a sports car class, and I have 2 enums. So that car can have colors red, black, blue, or silver, and the types are Porsche, Ferrari, and Jaguar. So those are the 2 types that I created. And so now I'm saving those data type enums here. So I'm storing for every single car. I'm going to store its car type, which is going to be one of these 3 options, and the car color. And then here I'm asking the user For the card type they type it in, I read it in as a string. I use the value of method to convert it to a card type, and then maybe I have like some switch statement that tells me what it is that I want to print. But that's basically how you use enums.